Welcome to FS-ISAC's podcast, FinCyber Today. I'm Elizabeth Heathfield, Chief Communications Officer at FS-ISAC. AI has been one of the hot topics here at our EMEA Summit in Amsterdam. And so I spoke with Lindsey Bateman, CISO of M&G and member of our UK Strategic Subsidiary Board, about how she's thinking about integrating AI into her program and how she's bringing strategic thinking into her everyday work. All right, so thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. When we started talking about this podcast, you mentioned the term future horizons as something that you wanted to talk about. So I think it'll be great to take this opportunity to just zoom way out and think about, talk about what does a CISO need to be thinking about at the longer term strategic, from the longer term strategic point of view.
Yeah, so the reason I think I mentioned the future horizon risks is because it's something we have to work to keep front of mind. The CISO role, as you know, is massively varied, and it can be sometimes very busy trying to spin all the plates. And we get sucked into operational detail, and it's really important operational detail, right? We need to secure our organizations, but it's vitally important that we look up from that operational activity and see what's coming down the line. Because our job is not just to secure the organization today, it's to secure the organization of tomorrow. And we work in a fast-moving environment. And I think specifically for CISO, so every business executive would say it's a fast-moving environment, Darwinism, etc. But from a CISO perspective, you have that emerging technology, you have the business changing around you, but also there's that extra angle of threat, which I think can change very, very quickly as well. So keeping an eye on the horizon is very important and a key part of my role.
So obviously the first thing that comes to mind in terms of what's on the horizon is AI, not even it's come way over the horizon now, but it's still also on the horizon, right? It's still like, we don't really know where it's going to go and even how long it's going to take to completely upend, everything. I don't know.
Yeah.
So how are you thinking about AI, now and in the short term, medium and long term in terms of how you're positioning your organization to handle it?
Yeah. So I would agree. I think talking about it as a future horizon risk, that ship has now sailed. It's been one that's been there on the edges. There has been stuff happening in that space, but it hasn't really been front and center for a CISO, but it is now, right? It's exploded. And I've seen sort of a graph doing the rounds that shows, or a chart showing the relative adoption curves of tablets, mobile phones, and then generative AI in their first their opening years of existence. And generative AI has really gone a vertical cliff this year. And we know we're all using it in our personal lives. You can bet your bottom dollar that everyone is using it in the enterprise. Even if you try to block it, it's there. And you can't. It's a juggernaut. You cannot, as a CISO, stand in front of that juggernaut and stop it. You have to find ways to make that safe for the organization.
So how are you doing it?
I think the first thing I would say is that actually, I think for a CISO, that's a relatively small part of the risk. I think we jump quickly into, security, it's a real worry. But I think there's a much bigger picture in respect of data model risk. So thinking about ethics and bias and explainability of models, that's a really big problem to solve. And actually, from a CISO perspective, I'm going to be positive CISO here, optimist, that brings real opportunity for us. Because if the business looks at generative AI as the shiny toy that everyone wants to play with, then good organizations with good risk governance are saying, great, we want you to play with that toy, but you need to do it safely. So to do that, you need to clean up the playroom a bit. We need to get the data sorted out first. So if you need really good quality data to make this work. And I think to play with AI in that space, data governance really comes sharply into focus. And as a CISO, that's great news, right? Because we want that curated data. We want to know that the access to it is being carefully managed. We want to know it's being cleaned up before it's being made available to people. So that's starting with a bit of a positive side to what's happening there, a real business focus on data clear up. But there are risks as well, right? And from a CISO perspective, I look at it, I would say there's two angles that I would focus on there. So there's a security by design piece. We know that the adoption and the creation of AI models and the use in our business naturally increases our attack surface, just like any other technology deployment, but with a few special nuances, like it being really, really hard to understand for the layman. So I think every CISO needs to have specialist resources aligned to those business programs that are bringing in adoption. And they might not be programs, right? It might just be, Johnny in finance doing something with it. But we need to try and surface that, get involved in it, and then identify. It's more of the same of what we're always doing. So modeling the threats, looking at where the vulnerabilities are created, and then making sure we have the right mitigations in place against those vulnerabilities. So you've got that sort of security by design piece. And then the other big area is, of course, really thinking about how it's supercharging the threat. So if we're using it, the bad guys are using it too, and they don't have any of that pesky ethics, governance framework to worry about, so they can probably go a bit faster than us in many cases. And I think we're already seeing a bit of that happening. I think there's a lot of noise and excitement, but when you cut through that to what's really being accelerated, the two areas that I think really need a lot of focus are the social engineering angle. So naturally, the use of AI to improve the quality of phishing emails. So they're sorting the spelling and grammar. GenAI can help to deliver really personalised and enticing phishes that are very hard to spot even for an expert. So we definitely need to respond to that. And the days of maybe relying on a sheep dip e-learning once a year for your security awareness, or even a monthly phishing email that everyone gets, I don't think that cuts it anymore. This has got to be behaviours-based culture and awareness activity that really resonates with people, because they are making security decisions day in, day out, whether they know it or not. Where do I click? Can I send this to somebody? So I think it's really vitally important that we supercharge our awareness in respect of that. And then the other area I think is probably, so it's kind of less relevant for financial services, but equally it's important for us as citizens, I suppose, is the sort of information operations angle. So deep fakes. I think, so there is a financial services angle in terms of frauds and scams. So certainly from that angle, but sort of largely sort of threat to democracy of these deep fakes is pretty scary stuff.
Yeah. When the fakes are so good, right, whether that's a phishing email or a deep fake impersonation of the CEO who's saying, send me money or whatever, how do we actually make people, look, what are the principles of making people aware on an ongoing basis that at any moment the email that they're getting or whatever that they're seeing could not be real and there would be no way to tell?
So I think there's nothing like exercising to get it front of people's minds, and they will often help you to work out the answer then. And it might be that adding a verification check to a process, a phone call as well as an email if it's a payment. And there's some practical things you can do. In my organisation, for example, we've told everybody WhatsApp is not a business communications tool. So, because a lot of the scams, that's how they come in, is on that sort of WhatsApp and social media angle. So getting people to understand that there are official channels whereby things are asked for and approved, and their understanding of that. But yeah, I think there's lots of fun stuff we can do with awareness as well. I've seen some really good progress in terms of people thinking about the psychology of it, looking at things like security nudging. So in the moment, when it looks like when the system can tell you're doing something that looks a bit dangerous, you might get a little nudge that says, looks like you're sharing a password. Do you really want to do that? That's kind of on the basic side. I don't think we've quite got there on the AI side. But when we look at what our vendors are doing, so they're making a whole lot of noise in this space as well. And I think there's a lot of innovation happening now, and it will continue to happen. And we need to look at where we can adopt AI into our defences as well. Because back to the opportunities again, there is a huge opportunity there for us to use AI. When I look at my SOC, for example, we have for the last multiple years, as long as people can remember, worried about alert fatigue. And how do you keep your SOC analysts engaged when they're churning through lots and lots of false positives? And I think there's a real opportunity there to use AI to make that job a bit easier, to take some of that grunt work away. So that would be an example of where we can perhaps use AI to help in that space.
Great. Another topic people have been talking about for a while, and it's definitely still a future horizon, I think, although by the time we air this, you never know, is quantum. And, I've talked to a lot of CISOs about this now, and the I guess, level of not awareness, but immediate actionability varies widely in terms of how quickly people think it's going to impact their organization and how much focus they put on it now. Where do you sit on that spectrum?
So I think this is a really interesting one, because if you'd asked me 12 months ago, I would have said, of all the plates I'm spinning, that one's kind of over there. And if it falls off, or it doesn't look like it's going to fall off anytime soon. But in the last 12 months, the focus has really grown. I think there's been a real realization in the industry that we need to start doing something now. And I think there's a combination of factors in play there. There's a view that we don't quite know when this is going to happen. And it's difficult to know how quickly it's coming down the pipe, because some of the development of these quantum computing technologies is happening very much behind closed doors. It's nation state level. And as a result, they may be further forward than we know. There are rumours of good progress being made, and that has certainly focused minds. And I think there's also been some important work that's been done in looking at how long will it take us how long is it going to take us to prepare to be quantum proof, if you like, right? So how will we do the work that needs to be done to transform the algorithms that we're using to be quantum proof? And I think any CISO thinking about that starts to scratch their head and think, when we've had to do something like that in the past, we've had to maybe get from one algorithm to a different algorithm for one specific technology. That's been a challenge to identify it and to do it. But so if we don't start preparing now, then we may be caught, that plate may fall off. So we do need to start thinking about it now. And there's some really good guidance and advice now about there's lots of guidance out there in terms of what you can do, steps you can take now. You can't fix it now, because we're still working on what does good look like in this space, what are the standards that we will need to adopt. And then there'll be a lot of work for the various vendors to work at how they incorporate that into their products. But what we can do is start to identify where we are using cryptography around about our organizations. And we can start thinking about which ones are going to be the really important ones for us to address first. And we can start thinking about how difficult is it for us at the moment to change those algorithms in and out? And is there something that we could do today that could mean we will be more agile in that space going forward? So I think a lot of the CISOs I talk to in financial services, that's the work that they are getting onto their radar now. So you see that risk when you're doing your future horizon scan, it's moving from the watching brief column into the do something now space as we move through into next year.
What are the other, I don't know, big looming ships sitting just over the horizon that you're thinking, maybe it was over the horizon, but maybe now we need to start thinking about it?
So I don't think there's anything that's new or startling that I would bring out. Unfortunately, things do come around the corner without us expecting them, and we have to be prepared for anything. But the sort of themes, again, that we're looking at are regulatory explosion with DORA, etc., and that big focus on resilience, our supply chain, and sort of cloud and third parties is definitely again. It's probably watching brief for more coming in terms of we need to understand what the detailed standards behind some of those regulations are so that we can implement them. but I think probably quite well understood the general direction of travel.
One of the things that we think about a lot is the paramount importance of identity and maintaining the digital trust, maintaining the trust of our customers. Some of it isn't in the control of the financial institution per se, because, a lot of fraud is happening on the customers that we never see. But it still seems like if we're going to maintain trust in the financial system writ large, that we still need to kind of step up and try to figure it out as much as possible. So how are you thinking about ensuring that we maintain, identity solutions and keep the trust of the customers that we need to obviously maintain our businesses?
Yeah, I think we talk about this a lot. Identity is, as you say, trust, such an important concept. And I don't think we have nailed it yet in any way. We've talked about zero trust and zero trust approaches to security. We've talked about passwordless and making it easy for consumers, but we haven't nailed it. We haven't, and this will take collective action as an industry. That's making it easier for consumers to have that confidence as they log into their account, to have that confidence as they receive contact from us. We need to standardise approaches, and we need to standardise on the best modern tool sets that make that easy for them.
Yeah. Not a solved problem, but that's a big one, and it feels like sometimes it's not, maybe it doesn't get the attention that it requires because it's so basic, but it's so fundamental that I feel like if we ignore it at our peril.
Agreed.
So in the context of all of this, how is the role of the CISO changing? And how do you see it changing as we move into the future, certainly as it's becoming cyber and resilience are getting a lot more attention at the higher levels of organizations?
Yes, so I think the role has changed already a lot in the 30 odd years that CISOs have existed. It's changed from being quite a technical niche role into really quite a high profile role in organizations with lots of business executive interaction. And that's the way it should be. CISOs who are doing a good job are not stuck in the technology department. They are very well known and respected figures in the technology department because technology is so crucial to what we do. But they have to also be able to talk the business language. And that's only becoming more important when we look at the way GenAI is enabling or getting the business excited about the opportunity for them to be citizen developers, which is quite a scary phrase when we think how difficult it is to control even the small gang of software technology developers. You let everyone get loose on this stuff. It's quite a thought. So I think we need to be able to talk to the business. We need to. They're keen to exploit these technologies, but we need them to respect our view around about the risk. And most the executives I speak to, they want to do this safely, but they need you to explain to them how that can be done. You need to make it get the right shaping and frameworks in place to help them along. So I think a lot more interaction with business teams. We have to keep that eye on the horizon, of course, and be the person who's coming back to the organisation and saying, this is coming, we need to get prepared early. So that kind of getting ready for investment, etc., is important as well.
And I'm actually making this now a standard question I'm asking everybody that I interview. What advice would you give to people who might want to be in your shoes in a couple of years?
Yeah, so go for it, because it's an absolutely brilliant job. I've talked quite a lot about the variety in the role and the changing nature of it. And I think that makes it such an exciting place to work. But equally, it can make it a difficult, very difficult role. You need a level of resilience to do that. So I would be saying, do your due diligence around about where you want to work. Make sure you have the right sponsorship and support around you. And try and gain a taste of lots of different things. So it might be to proceed into upwards in your career, go sideways a bit, broaden your experience, because the more you can understand what's going on around, in a lot of ways, it's not important for me to have deep technical, detailed knowledge. And in fact, it would be dangerous, because then you get sucked in and tempted into that detail. What you need as a CISO is a broad range of different levels of technical understanding. And you need to be able to be a people person as well, because you're going to need to to lead a wide variety of different functions. So I guess that's not really one simple piece of advice, but I would say think carefully about what it is you want to do, and yeah, go for it.